This morning, screenwriter, director, and now novelist David Koepp. Koepp's work has fascinated moviegoers for a long time. He wrote the screenplays for Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible, Spider-Man, and many more, films that have grossed more than $2 billion. Now he's on his second book, Aurora, already being turned into a movie. It imagines a very real scenario, but one hardly anyone thinks about, something that would change life as we know it. It only took a couple pages until we were hooked.
See, looking through the solar telescope, you see how much activity and how intense the sun's busyness and power is.
Every day, 2 or 3 times a day, the sun throws off massive clouds of electromagnetic plasma. They are called coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, firing off from spots on the sun's surface. You can't see them with your naked eye, but you can through a telescope.
Hiya.
Hi.
Hi.
Which is what we did at the Vanderbilt Mansion Planetarium in Centerport, New York.
I am looking at the surface of the sun right now.
Right, face on.
Wow. What are the black things? Just like little black dots.
So those are the sunspots.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh.
Each of the sunspots that you're seeing is about the size of Earth or bigger.
So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4.5, 5 sunspots right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's an idea that has been in my head for a long time. I'm really interested in the notions of powerlessness, you know, both literal and metaphorical.
This book scared the out of my wife.
Well, that was not my intention.
What he did intend was to explore what happens to those CMEs.
Normally they drift off into space and they're never heard from again. Sometimes they'll have a glancing blow on the Earth and mess with the electrical grid a little bit. In 1859, it was a direct hit.
In 1859, the only electrical systems in wide use were telegraph machines. Repairs were made in days. Today, electric power is the backbone of life for 7 billion people. Scientists believe direct hit CMEs that would wreak havoc on the grid system happen on average once every 150 years. Since the last one was in 1859, we are overdue. If a CME hit the Earth head-on today, how long would power be out for?
The short answer is 12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months without power, leading to a dissolution of society as we know it. Imagine with frightening consequences in Koepp's book, Aurora.
My thinking was, God, if it happened today and the grid went down around the world for an extended period of time, that's terrifying. We don't know how to live any other way anymore.
Koepp's novel begins in Aurora, Illinois, just a couple hours from where he grew up in Pewaukee, Wisconsin. His father owned a billboard company. His mother was a therapist. He always knew he wanted to write stories.
And where does he think he's going? When you gotta go, you gotta go.
One of his earliest screenplays also happened to be one of the most successful adaptations ever made.
Hey, Ian, freeze! Got the cat!
You were 29 when you wrote Jurassic Park. Is it nutty to think about?
I so didn't know what was happening, and you know, you can't. It was my 4th movie, and it was good. It wasn't something you need to be embarrassed of. And a part of you thinks, oh, this is how it's going to be now. And I have had a wonderful career and had other movies that connected with audiences, but nothing quite like that.
Koepp has written or co-written the screenplays for the first Mission Impossible, the first Spider-Man, and Carlito's Way.
Hey, Mr. Brigante, it's the second time you turn me down for a drink, man. Well, you don't like my champagne?
Hey, could be.
Where's Lisa?
Though there have been some misses, including Zathura,
A little excessive, but I like it.
Mordecai, and the 2017 version of The Mummy.
Wow, that was intense.
Is it more helpful for you to think about the successes or the failures?
Unfortunately, your mind goes to the failures a lot. It's hard not to think that as the writer or writer-director, it's mostly your fault because you're the one who said, wouldn't this be a great idea? And the answer to the question, turns out, is no.
But it motivates you.
Oh, totally. I mean, my number one goal with a movie or a book is to avoid public humiliation. That's like the baseline. And if I can get past that, then everything else is gravy.
It's part of life. It's like ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not. Brian De Palma's been a good friend of mine for 30 years, and I had a movie early in my career come out that wasn't gonna do well. And he put his arm around me and said, "Kid, you haven't lived until you've taken down a whole studio."
For Koepp, Aurora is more than just another potential hit in his long storytelling career. It's a warning about the ever-present danger of CMEs.
What we have not done is anything to prepare for that so that it doesn't happen for 12 to 18 months.
What can we do?
It's called hardening the infrastructure. We know when CMEs are coming from the sun, we know how strong they are, we can measure their radiance, we can predict to the minute when they're going to hit the Earth. And really all you have to do is be able to take the grids offline before they hit.
But hardening the infrastructure costs money.
It certainly does. But you see the risks if we don't. You know, the Texas blackout of 2021 was because there was a lot of snow and it got really cold. And the grid, Texas has its own grid, and it collapsed and people died. There have been some improvements, but not nearly what there needs to be, which isn't a fortune, but it has to be spent in advance of a problem. And it's very hard to prepare for a problem that hasn't happened yet as people.
Take that old military term, we always fight the last war, right? You
Right.
never know what the next disaster is going to be.
12 to 18 months, frightening. The Dish coming up next.
I started telling my wife about this book, and the disaster planning went into effect in a big way.
It's unreal.
Start taking the cash out of the bank.
Well, cash actually, so you ask Koepp about what to do. So, and this plays out in the book as well. Cash is a huge thing.
Right, which
We're so
nobody has
dependent on
anymore.
credit cards.
Just
Nobody
cash,
has. Yep.
cash money becomes a big thing when disasters hit and all this happens. I mean, the red line, the big thing is water. They say a gallon of water per person per day. You should have some water, some supply of water. The other thing he said, you know, depending on where you live, you need some sort of warmth. You know, so they somehow space heaters, something. There are like solar chargers now that can power things up. I mean, he does say
Solar charger, that's a good one.
solar charger's a good one.
Yeah.
You know, he did say it, and this is coming from a guy who lives in the city. He said after disaster, one of the first things you want to do is get out of a city if you can.
Right.
Find an escape plan.
It's interesting. I was telling you guys before the show, I've been watching a show that's about Katrina, which we talked about earlier, 17 years ago. You listen to the beginning of that before Katrina hit and the problems that happened after. And what that warning was at the end, it costs money to make sure that they're ready for something like this. Same thing with Katrina. There were so many things of, oh, we should do this with the levee system. We should do this. Things that didn't get done because of the cost that could have made a difference.
It always seems impossible until it's happening. And then you start thinking about, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that?
Haven't lived till you've taken down a studio. Jeff, give it a shot.